Hello, hello. My name is Joy Ravella, the host of the Everyday Joy podcast. This is episode 140, and that means another deep dive week is around the corner. So every 50 episodes, we stop, we reflect on 5 moments from the 50 episodes. So if there's been an episode between episode 100 through to today's episode that you would like me to do a deep dive on, you want to know more about the context, you want to know more about, well, what I think about it or my experience in that space, or maybe you just want to hear more on a particular Bible verse, send through an email. The email address is in the description below. Hey, you're in for such a treat. Let's get into today's conversation with Joe Chapman, today's guest on the Everyday Joy podcast.
Proverbs 16 verse 32 in the G&T version. It is better to be patient than powerful. It is better to win control over yourself than over whole cities.
Once again, I've got the incredible Joe here in studio with me. Joe, so good to have you.
Thank you.
Now, yesterday, really powerful episode, we talked about who you are and not setting up other people as experts over your whole life. And you touched on an area on your life that I think was really attacked because yesterday, and you have to listen to episode 140 about words spoken over you that aren't true. You talked about you being a mother and how that was under fire a little bit, and I love how today we are going to step into you as a parent because you are a phenomenal mum. I've seen how you just absolutely love and dote on your kids, and you've talked about that in previous episodes. So today's conversation, we are going to be focusing on that a little bit later. But Joe, what are your first impressions of this verse?
Well, who likes to be patient? I think patience is one of those things that, especially today where everything needs to be now and we have, everything at our fingertips in moments with the internet and all of the technology. I think patience is an art that we need to learn. It's not something that can be done quickly. Patience, by its very definition, is a waiting game.
Yes, and how you wait matters, I think. For me, my first impression of this is that patience is really powerful in and of itself. This verse starts off saying, it is better to be patient than powerful. And I think about the people in my own life, those who were able to break down walls and change hearts and create massive change through their patience rather than just forcing things to happen. And so this verse reminds me that, Joy, you don't have to fight every battle. You don't have to go guns blazing with every conversation. Wait it out. Give it 48 hours. See if you still feel the same way. I think this verse is a lot about governing your own emotions. And for some of us, it's easy. For some of us, it's a bit of a challenge.
No, so true.
What does this verse, Joe, tell you about who God is or what matters to him?
I think the word power really sticks out to me. I think the way that we as humans view what is powerful and what God sees as powerful is very different. And I think that's something that I see. It's basically saying patience is a power. And God's never in a hurry. God doesn't panic. God's not in a rush. So God's the ultimate patience example.
Yeah. There was this quote or something someone said to me, and it said, God is rarely early, he is never late, but he is almost always just on time. And they spoke about how frustrating that is for us when we want God to turn up early, but then he shared some really great Bible stories, and maybe I'll go into this in another episode, what you gain in the leaning in God. And the reason why he turns up often just on time is because yes, he is faithful and he will turn up and he will provide, but what you learn in that waiting process is priceless.
Oh, yeah.
And he's not going to rob us from that experience, which is why often we have to go through it. So if you are in a waiting season, if you are struggling to be patient right now, know that God will turn up, but also there's so much to be learnt in the process of waiting. And I know you've got a story about that, Joe.
Yes, I do. I would say when I was younger, I wasn't a patient person at all. I'm a very super active, sort of fast-paced person and very impulsive and reactive, and I wouldn't say I was patient at all. And I remember being in church and in a service, and the youth leader came up to me at the time. I was in my 20s, early 20s, and they said to me, "You have the gift of long suffering." And who wants that gift?
I know. I was like, oh, can I exchange that for something else, please?
And I actually laughed and afterwards thought, oh, how someone can get something so wrong. But I'm 53 and I actually do have the gift of long suffering. And it's come through patience. And I would have thought it was the last gift that I would have. But you know what? It's funny how God tells you something, you don't accept it, you don't see it, but life shows you things. And so you don't know what you're going to go through in your 40s and beyond when you're 20. So this is my story. I've got so many stories. I have a daughter, and I've mentioned this before. She's now 22, and at 16, she started, being rebellious, and she got involved in, some friends that weren't a good influence, and she started, into taking marijuana and different drugs. And we found out along the way that she has BPD, which is borderline personality disorder, a lot of rejection and a lot of upsets around abandonment. That's what that is in her, and ADHD as well. And so she was self-medicating, and I didn't know that she had this as a mum as she was growing up. But she went into a phase of a lot of issues around drug use and self-harm and mental health issues. And of course, when she was 16, I thought, well, how to handle this. There's a lot of details in it, a lot of tears, a lot of joy, but we are very, very close. It has been a very, very difficult 16 to 22, and we're still in it, but she's coming out the other side. But in this, I've learned patience. Patience is the power. And what I mean by that is you're playing the long game. You're not reacting. So, for example, I've learned as a mum that walking alongside her is like Jesus walks alongside me. We're the hands and the feet of Jesus. How many times has God wanted me to do something and I don't do it or I don't learn it? He doesn't attack me. He doesn't react to me. He patiently waits for me to self-discover. He keeps bringing up opportunities for me to come across that path again and see if I can learn a little bit more. He doesn't abandon me. He doesn't leave me. He waits with me and he helps me self-discover.
Must be hard though, because obviously as a mum who loves and wants to protect your child and wants the best for her, how do you manage that time in between when you're like, okay, I can see the train wreck, I can see that you're about to make a not so great decision, or she's just made one, and you want to respond, you want to react. How do you bite down on that very human emotion and create the space for self-discovery? Because it sounds beautiful and it sounds like a wonderful thing, but in practice, in the heat of it, it's really hard to do.
It is really, really hard. I've learnt it. So you make mistakes and then you realise that didn't work. Me yelling and screaming and saying, don't do that, this, what are you doing with your life? When someone's got those mental health issues, they would do anything to break out of it. They know they're not succeeding. They know that they're in a mess. They don't need you to tell them. They already know it. What they need is validation that it's hard, understanding that they've made a mistake. As she's going through it, I'm going through it. And as much as she's learning, I'm learning. It's not about me teaching her, she's teaching me. I used to walk past kids that had, tattoos and drug issues and think, oh, they had a terrible parent. Well, haven't I learned a lesson? I never have ever taken a drug in my life, never smoked, have grown up in atypical, I could be a poster in a church, right? Not perfect, but my daughter's got her own journey and I'm privileged. She's rich in experience and she's rich in her love for God. And I've learnt just as much on the journey as she has from a safe place where she's been in a difficult space. I've learnt when she yells that I whisper. I've learnt that when she is hurting and she says things to me she doesn't mean, that is just the enemy trying to work through a situation. There's been times where she's had police issues and she's been horrible, and I stand there and I say to her, you are loved. God is with you. And the police are looking at me and I say, I'll never, ever leave you. I love you. I support you. And I just speak life over her. It really goes back to episode yesterday. What you're speaking is bringing person to a different place of action. And I speak the opposite of what I see. I speak the life when the enemy is speaking death. And it's a long journey. But it's me discovering me and growing. And it's taking someone on a journey of self-discovery. And you're Jesus to that person in that moment. Patience is the power. The weakness is in reactions and quick responses, anger, and ill thought through things. Jesus is patient with us, so let's be patient with others.
I just love the honesty and vulnerability that Jo brings to each and every episode she does. And two things really stood out for me today. The first thing is this: the long game. Patience is a superpower for those who are playing the long game. Now, I don't know who is testing your patience right now. I don't even know if it's a situation or a person or something maybe within you. But if you're playing the long game, if you are looking at years and years of relationship with this person, or you're looking at an overall legacy you want to leave behind, if you're thinking intergenerationally, if you're thinking eternally, then patience is your superpower. It's a superpower for those who are playing the long game and who aren't motivated by sudden bursts and day-to-day decisions. Something to think about for you. The other point I want to make is something that Jo pointed out when she was talking about her daughter. I love this quote so much that I've actually scheduled it, and it's up on the Everyday Joy podcast community. And what I love about what she shared is the truth of this, especially for those of us who don't struggle with mental health illness. This is what Jo said. When someone has mental health issues, they would do anything to break out of it. They don't need you to tell them that they are a mess. What they need is validation that it's hard. So if you want to check out that post, it is up on the Everyday Joy Facebook community group. And if you'd like to join the group, it's super easy. Just click the link in the description below and you can be a part of this thriving, bustling, friendly group of individuals who love this podcast and love the idea of unpacking a verse day by day and growing closer to God together. Well, that wraps up today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I look forward to catching up again tomorrow.